I have dperry, who's a world affairs analyst from Tel Aviv. Thank you very much, Dan, for joining me in this discussion. Let me just start with my first question to you. If asked, do you see Saudi Arabia furnishing intelligence evidence linking the Mukalla weapons shipment directly to the UAE?
They've made claims, but I don't think it's been very impressively substantiated. I'm sure elements are true, but the direct link to the UAE government, I think, so far has been weak. They haven't really proven that. However, it is true, and it is rather well known that the UAE is more sympathetic to the STC than Saudi Arabia is, and that has to do with the bigger strategic issues about how the two countries, how the two powers in the Gulf view the increasingly difficult and vexing problem of Yemen.
All right, and how do the STC's recent territorial gains in Hadramaut and Al Mahra alter the balance of power between Saudi-backed forces and UAE-aligned groups on the ground?
Oh, very much so. It throws out into the open what could eventually become a civil war between the STC, which is led by Salafists essentially, and the rest of the globally recognized Yemeni government. It had been in the past very much kept under control and almost under wraps, and the impression was of a recognized government fighting the Houthis. And of course, despite Saudi and UAE help, they had failed to take back the critical parts of Yemen, including the capital, Sana'a, and the critical port of Hodeidah that basically controls the Bab el-Mandeb. That is why the Houthis have been able to disrupt up to a quarter of global maritime container trade, to cause so much damage to Egypt, and to hamper traffic through the Suez Canal to the extent that they did, costing Egypt billions of dollars a year, which Egypt can ill afford, and in general making such a big noise in the world because of their control over critical territory that the anti-Houthi forces that world kind of thought falsely were unified were unable to take back. And now I think this only strengthens the Houthis, that it's been revealed so dramatically that not only do the secessionist forces that want to establish a separate South Lebanon, not only are they making territorial gains, but they're causing an open rift between the UAE and Saudi Arabia. There could hardly be better news for the Houthis, and hardly be worse news for anyone who wants to see Yemen reconstituted as a functioning country under one government.
Dan, also let's talk about the STC further. Given that it is part of Yemen's Presidential Leadership Council, does Riyadh, in your opinion, risk undermining its own political roadmap by targeting this group inside the recognized government structure?
I mean, they basically risk losing the momentum for any anti-Houthi forces. Clearly, it comes from a very divergent view between Saudi Arabia and the UAE. Saudi Arabia shares a very long border with Yemen. It's a buffer zone, essentially, to the potential mayhem off the Horn of Africa. And Saudi Arabia wants Yemen to be a unitary country and to have it be stable the way it was before 2015, basically, more or less, under a not very democratic, but at least a government that can control the territory as a whole, despite, in fact, even for the decade preceding, the Houthis having succeeded in creating some instability in the mountain regions. Now, the UAE is very different. The UAE views things in maritime, through a maritime perspective, basically. They're interested in trade going through the Gulf of Aden and up the Red Sea, and they're okay with having Yemen be divided into fiefdoms that they have good relationships with. This is a fundamentally divergent point of view, and it is a rare instance where we see very much out in the open not only such a dramatic difference between the UAE and Saudi Arabia, but also some risk of a proxy war between forces backed by either. And this really can only be terrible news for anyone who wants to see stability restored in the region. And I would add the fact that Israel has, in the past week or so dramatically entered the fray by recognizing Somaliland, which is across the Gulf of Aden, basically,
Yeah.
and across the Bab el-Mandeb. That's part of the equation as well.
And how does this also affect the Red Sea area and the Arabian shipping corridors?
Well, that's just it. I mean, if can you imagine if the squabbling factions and the anti-Houthi forces might lose control of their people, and they too might start uh, uh, either fighting each other or potentially attacking shipping. I mean, the world really depends on a stable situation in the Gulf of Aden and through the Bab el-Mandeb. The last thing anyone needs is for there to be three or maybe more warring parties backed by two major powers bombing each other's weapon shipments. And I repeat, with Israel just across the water, potentially also getting involved in favor or against one or two or three of the warring factions. It's a recipe for massive instability. The region had hitherto depended on the non-Islamist forces in the region cooperating, and that includes Egypt, Saudi Arabia, and the UAE primarily, and this kind of desperate division between them that ends up leading to war action, as we've seen, is truly very bad, and it could lead, in if enough violence ensues and enough instability is created, to a resurgence of Al Qaeda in the Arabian Peninsula, which had been somewhat subdued, or ISIS, and then all bets are off.
All right, then Dan Perry, thank you very much for joining me and speaking to us here at NewsX World's Deep Dive.